In episodes 3 and 4 of Let the Right One In, we focus on Eleanor and Isaiah's relationship building more, Naomi getting deeper into investigating all that is happening regarding the business that Frank, Matthew, and also Roland is a part of. And we also see Mark and Zeke really connect more in just in time for when Mark's going to need Zeke the most. So just to get them out the way, because clearly I may never like this grouping. Arthur dies. Claire has to take over. She decides to butt heads with Matthew a little bit because, she doesn't like what he does in terms of what he contributes to the Peter situation. But she ends up needing him in the long run because he makes a good human test subject and he's willing to do it. And through testing on one of the chimpanzees that Arthur was keeping and also testing on Matthew, she is able to come up with a painkiller that's strong enough even for a vampire like Peter, who generally speaking painkillers don't work for. But because of the potency, she's able to finally remove all that scarred tissue from when Peter walked into the sun. And I can fully bet you that, like with Arthur's last painkiller, more than likely Matthew's going to figure a way to turn this painkiller into a drug, ship it out with Roland, who's also a Marine, as we're told, veteran overall. And thankfully, they should be increasingly on a collision course with Naomi. Now, why do we say they're on a collision course with Naomi? Well, it's because Naomi encounters in the sewers a guy like the one that Mark was chasing earlier this season. Except this guy, he has a whole setup down in the sewers, including a couple of dead bodies around him. And being that, Ben and Naomi are partners and they investigate this situation together, when Ben gets attacked, Naomi has to fire her weapon on this guy, and it's not lost on her that 3 bullets didn't take this man down. As seen when Claire injected Matthew with her painkiller, it seems the painkiller that Arthur came up with, it gives people vampire-like abilities. So that's why we're saying that Naomi's going to be a collision course with Claire and them because she made a more potent version of what her father made. But that aside, Ben gets attacked by a man named Xavier. Xavier gets shot 3 times by Naomi, and then she shoots him in the head because him getting shot 3 times did absolutely nothing. It was like Juggernaut coming at you. It was not going to stop him, but hit him in the head, it's over. Now, with killing this man, who's a black man, Naomi feels terrible about it because she's been on the force around 12 years and been Ben's partner about 5 years. And this is the first time she's really getting treated as a hero. And her being treated as a hero for killing a black man, it just doesn't sit right with her. It's sort of like, it's not as bad as Mark feels when it comes to killing people, but you can tell it's weighing on her spirit. So with that in mind, she decides first to just pay her respects to Xavier and go to his funeral. But then as she starts to ask questions, she realizes that Xavier is not this typical crazed drug addict that, the newspapers want him to seem like. But when it comes to the police department and their PR, they're trying to make him seem like the serial killer that Naomi has been looking for all this time. But with the way that Xavier's father's talking, Xavier was in NA for the last couple of months. And then when Naomi goes to the NA meetings, she realizes that these people are being preyed upon, sometimes right outside the meeting. And according to Jason, who heads the meetings, about half of the people in the last few weeks have pretty much disappeared, which for him means usually when somebody leaves, either they got them better or they fell off the wagon and they're ashamed. And he seems to be leaning toward the shame part, so this is what's setting Naomi on track to really look into what's going on in the streets beyond what she's naturally just been drawn to because somebody got killed or injured. But on a lighter note, Eleanor and Isaiah are closer than ever. Yes, Abel and his little friends, including Isaiah's former friend, bullied Isaiah, even left a few marks, mainly because they wanted to know that about the trick that Eleanor did when she's raced from the front of the stage to the back of the room, and because of course Isaiah don't know how that happened, he can't tell Abel and the friends. They beat him up for that, and then Isaiah pretty much begs Eleanor to reveal what happened, but her running from the front to the back quickly because she's a vampire isn't something she's ready to really tell Isaiah. So instead, she tracks down Abel, tells him to stop bullying Isaiah. He wants to get Buck, so she breaks his finger. And from what we're told by Isaiah, he's had 2 weeks of peace. And that's on top of, getting big ups for having such a notable magic, displayed during the talent show. However, while he wants to back away from questioning his new best friend, as much as Naomi wants to let it go because her son having a best friend was something she possibly never fathomed, things get a little dicey. It starts off good. Eleanor convinces Isaiah to sneak out the house. Ben's supposed to be watching the kids, but he's worried about the game and, falls asleep. Naomi's off doing the investigation we just talked about, so it's pretty easy for Eleanor to sneak Isaiah out. But what starts off with them just going to see a magic show at that shop that Naomi went to goes to them going to Queens, to where Eleanor used to live, having Isaiah break into a house where there's people, having him invite Eleanor in, which of course, vampire rules, so slight red flag on top of having him break into a house. And then Isaiah sees in a door frame Eleanor's ages, and with it being shown that she was 12 in 2012, major questions need to be asked. And when they get back to Isaiah's apartment in his room, so comes all the questions that he's been kind of holding back up until now. Whether it's that whole thing with the door frame, why is she always coming into his home through the window, considering there is no fire escape or anything like that for her to just walk across. She's tight. She has to grip onto the wall in order to get to his window, and that doesn't make sense. And also, it kind of makes me question, why is Naomi, this is kind of going to like a sidebar, but why is Naomi talking about not Eleanor sneaking into the house and acting like, she would probably hear her or see her to get in? Like, do you not realize that this girl had to come in a way besides the front door? And considering your apartment on the 4th floor, there's only one other way if she don't come through the front door. But that aside, Eleanor really wants to not answer the question truthfully, so she tries to dodge it. But with it becoming clear that, Isaiah is no longer at that point where he's just gonna not question things for the sake of holding on to this friendship, it seems she's ready to relent and tell him the truth. Meanwhile, as all that's happening, Mark is with Zeke. It's Beta's 10th anniversary. And, as much as Mark is really worried about Eleanor and what's going on with her, Zeke convinces him to be a little bit selfish and just enjoy his own life. So with that, Mark gets to cook and even take over Danielle's kitchen a little bit. He also gets to chat up Danielle, learn that she spent a lot of time, I think about a decade or so, in Mexico learning how to cook, even learn a bit of the culture. And those two really hit it off, even beyond where they already were. On top of that, Mark finds himself catching the eye of a girl named Tanya, who works for Zeke. And alongside a little bit of flirting, the two dance with each other. And Tanya makes it seem like she's ready to have a little after party with Mark, if not more. But whether it's just Mark not being ready to date, or even have sex with a woman that isn't his wife, he lightly says no, which both Zeke and Danielle see, and it's a bit mind-boggling why he said no in both of their minds. No, I think only Danielle sees. But either way, both you and Danielle probably are like, what's happening here? Why did you say no? Enjoy yourself. You've spent 10 years on the run. You probably have needs. Take care of them, for the love of God. But No sooner than that situation's over, Zeke and Roland are talking because Roland has made himself known. And unfortunately for both, Mark tries to get Zeke away from the situation so he can explain who Roland is, but no sooner does he do that, Roland comes into Zeke's office, makes it clear he knows who they are, makes it clear who he is, and is threatening Mark because what he knows is the following. He knows that Mark lied to him when he got confronted. He knows that Mark killed Frank because Mark snitched on himself. And with that, he wants to know all the details possible, and if he feels like Mark is lying, he's going to kill Mark in cold blood and Zeke right after. Which leaves you to wonder, so if Mark does tell the truth, what's next? Are they going to start running drugs out of Zeke's place or what? So the highlight is, I think every episode I'm going to probably note Isaiah as a highlight. And specifically when it comes to episode 3, watching those scenes of him being bullied, all I'm going to say is I'm so glad that this show isn't purely about Isaiah, because the amount of emotions that I get watching this kid get bullied, I don't know if it's triggering something that happened to me in the past. Is it because of this kid's performance or what? But I'm getting a little teary-eyed just thinking about it, and I probably need to drink water because it kind of burns a little bit. But it makes me so glad that in episode 4, because of Eleanor's actions in episode 3, that's not happening anymore, because the way Ian Foreman is on this show, I don't know what it is, but if he's happy, you are giddy and overjoyed, and if he's sad or going for something, you can't get past that whole point of, bawling. You're just sad, crying for this kid, and you can't get to that point of being angry because of the person who is doing something against him. You are stuck in your emotions just like that kid is stuck in his emotions, and it is taxing to watch in a good way. The next highlight is just the journey we see that Naomi is on and how they're developing her as a cop. Now, again, it's not clear why Naomi went from being a singer to a cop, but she's been doing it for 12 years, and you can see that she relatively enjoys her job. Now, I must admit, not only am I curious about why she became a cop, but also who was a partner before Ben got involved, but that's a whole separate thing. What matters is her reaction to killing Xavier, which really weighs on her spirit, her further investigating the situation to try to find some type of salvation, and how her storyline could potentially be a saving grace when it comes to the Peter, Claire, and Matthew situation, because right now they live in a whole separate storyline. They're not in Manhattan, they're not part of everything else going on, and with the path and journey that she's on, she's going to end up on a collision course with them. Whether it's because she gets involved with Roland, who definitely is working with Matthew, whether she tracks some of the killing that Matthew's involved in, or even Mark, and think it's, what Matthew's doing. Either way, I could easily see Naomi getting involved into their business and giving it life, and I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for it so badly so that I can stop feeling like I need to speed through this section, but no, I really can't, because there's probably details that could be important, or because I want to make sure that the character guide is still fairly up to date with whatever goes on in their lives. Another highlight is just the little details. Whether it's learning that Ben and Naomi have been working together for 5 years and seeing their dynamic, whether it's Danielle saying that she was in Mexico for 10 years and how her father tried to drag her back to the US but saw how she was so happy that he left her alone. It really kind of gives you the idea that, yes, characters like Ben, characters like Danielle, maybe even Tanya to a point, they're not lead characters, but they still have a life. Their life doesn't begin and end when the lead character walks into the scene. Daniel had a life before she joined Better's. Ben likely had a life before he got partnered up with Naomi. And yes, Tanya's very new, but there's something about her presence makes it clear. Mark is an option. He's not the only solution to whatever she wants in life right now. And just that vibe that these aren't like non-playable characters who just wait for you to interact with them so they can finally like put on their face, but they can come and go as they please and will always have something going on. It's appreciated. The last highlight, which kind of is part of the first one dealing with Isaiah, is that Isaiah's starting to ask questions. Naomi not asking questions is very curious considering she's a cop, and Eleanor is definitely weird, and out in Mark, and then it just gets like bizarre. But for Isaiah, I like that he's coming to that point in his friendship with Eleanor where he's not, kind of fearful of asking her questions out of the idea that maybe the more he asks, the more he may push her away. But now he is willing to, because he finally feels he can get comfortable, ask her why does she do this, why does she say that, or ask about the whole age thing with the door frame. That means he's finally starting to feel like this relationship is a secure one in his life. And considering his relationship with his dad wasn't or is, grammar's not my specialty, because that relationship isn't secure. And then with his mom, you can see, it's, he loves his mom, she loves him, but they don't really get each other. So with Eleanor, him being willing to, threaten this thing that is very new and is potentially the silver lining of his life, it's a beautiful thing to see that he's at that point where he's like, I know you're not going to go anywhere if I challenge you, hold you accountable, anything like that. So please just let me in. Let me know what's going on with you, because in a way you can kind of see there's a power imbalance because she's doing so much for him versus what he's doing for her. But I think in a way it's not just beneficial for Isaiah to, be vulnerable and everything, but it's finally giving Eleanor the opportunity to really connect with someone in a way that, because of her mother's death, because of Mark taking around the world, she hasn't been able to for so long. And yes, I think either it was episode 2 or maybe it was episode 3, we forgot to mention it, that when Zeke got to like talk to Eleanor and reconnect. But honestly, as we saw in episode 4, Eleanor needs people outside of the adults who have been kind of sheltering her in her life, and she needs other people. Now, is it lost on me that Eleanor is like 22 years old and she's trying to really connect with this 12-year-old kid who's straight up 12? Not at all. But I think in a way her mind is kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I want to say stagnant, but that's not the word. She has arrested development and she's stuck in 12 years old. So in a way you kind of want to give some grace to her being 22, yet, seeing herself as 12. But long story short, I appreciate that Isaiah finally has found a friend who he doesn't think is a fair weather person in his life, who understands him, who he can be vulnerable with, and he's coming to that point where he feels he's able to hold her accountable and ask that everything he's willing to do, that she does the same. Overall, as we approach the halfway mark with this season, I'm having less and less things to worry about, especially when it comes to Arthur, Peter, and Matthew, because it seems the one weak point of this whole show is eventually going to meet one of the strongest when it comes to Naomi. And then when it comes to Mark, Eleanor, and what they're going through, and Isaiah, there's such... the words emotional depth come to mind, but that's not really what I want to say. But I really want to kind of convey is that the development of these characters, whether it's subtle ways or ways that, are meant to like kind of twist the knife a little bit, are so good that I don't feel worried about the long-term potential of this show, which is something I can't say about everything I watch.